Good morning, Facebook, and welcome to another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. With me this morning, as always, is Kelly Dingens, Marketing Director here at the Core Finance Group. Good morning, Kelly. And Rex Johnson is our guest today. Good morning, Rex. How are you?
Good morning, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, it's funny because this was all coordinated in a different time frame, but for those of you watching either live or in syndication, as we'll put it, it's funny because Rex and I actually just shared a stage in Austin, Texas. We were speaking to a group of loan originators on a couple of different subjects, but we actually had a really great symbiosis over a few of them, so we'll probably discuss a bit of that today. But before we get too far in, Rex, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you do, how long you've been doing it, that kind of thing, and we'll roll from there.
Gotcha. So I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Luckily, I got the nickname the real estate Rexpert, and that comes from a depth of loan knowledge, construction knowledge, and real estate sales knowledge. To a 20-second synopsis of where I've been. 2004, I bought my first duplex. That was my first rental property. I owner-occupied it. Soon thereafter, called my agent and said, hey, how do I become a real estate agent? I did that. Never was really successful from '04 to '08 as an agent. I learned the technicals, but not how to be a great salesperson with great follow-up and great service and great information. I quickly got into the mortgage industry, and I was a loan officer from 2005 until 2015. And so then in 2015, I realized that I was really good in interacting with consumers and way better at that than selling to real estate agents as a loan officer. And so I would host open houses, and I got really good at it. And I got to the point where I would call agents and say, hey, I'm a loan officer. I'd like to host an open house at this listing you have. It looks like it's vacant. And if I meet some home buyers, I'd like to get them pre-approved, educate them, and then refer them back to you. And I spent all my time doing this. And then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to become an agent and do it myself. And so I did. In October 2015, I got my real estate sales license back. I'd given it up in order to originate FHA loans back in '08. But I got my sales license back, and by then I'd finally learned exactly what I needed to do to be successful, how to market myself, how to do it consistently. And 2016 was my first full year as an agent after being an LO. And I was fortunate enough to close 30 transactions my first year. And then year two was 2017, and that made it up to 53 transactions. Last year was a little bit slower. Forget the exact number, 48 or 49, but I also acquired 3 new rental properties, converted my former home to a rental property, and bought a new primary residence for myself and my wife, and completely renovated it, which I'm wrapping up right now.
Very cool. And Glenn, good morning. Appreciate the comment there. And just to answer that question and to address all of it, yes, Rex is a real estate agent, former loan originator. He is not actually working in a fulfillment center in India, despite that headset that would make us all think otherwise. And he did justify the audio issues he was having with his normal setup this morning before we went live. So, Glenn, hopefully that helps. And maybe Glenn will be the one to send you a lav mic so that we don't have your air traffic control headset causing you any issues. Although I'll bet you have a great opportunity to tune out all the outside noise. I can hear construction going on in the office above ours. I know my dog is running around the office and so on and so forth. So it's probably a great way to eliminate at least those audio interruptions.
And I don't even play video games. I only got this to make videos for clients so that I could have a microphone right in front of my face and tune out the noise. Yeah, and it was a speaker problem today, and so I had to put these on in order to hear you.
All right, Glenn, does that answer your other question now? He's not a gamer. He's just using it because the speakers were failing, all right? All right, so hopefully you guys can all hear all of us okay without too much issue. And I'm sure if you're watching, go ahead and let us know in the comments. But do let us know in the comments if you have questions, if there are things you want us to discuss specifically. I did kind of have something on my mind that I wanted to share with our audience that circumnavigated what you spoke on and what you and I spoke about before you took the stage in Austin, Texas, week before last, because I think it's just really good content for our real estate agent audience that watches, and of course for our our loan originator audience that watches, and obviously a lot of them understand the important nature of what a referral partner really means, what that relationship looks like. So for those of you that I am kind of leading down the road here, the subject of what Rex had spoken about, and he had actually inquired with me about it prior to taking the stage, was some tactics and techniques in getting offers accepted in what's obviously a very competitive market right now. And there's no question about that, where Rex is, where we are, in pretty much every major urban area in the country, from LA to New York, we're experiencing a housing shortage. We've got a legit supply and demand issue going on. There are just not enough places to live for people that want to live there. People are leaving rural areas. They're leaving middle America. They're going into the urban corridors. They don't want to have to worry about owning a vehicle. They want places with good transit. They want to have places where there's culture, activity, these kinds of things. So we're seeing this influx in the urban corridors, and because of it, we're having a supply and demand issue in real estate in those areas. And because of it, a lot of you that are real estate agents and mortgage originators, obviously watching this from the sidelines, there are significant issues with people making offers on properties where they're not the only one making an offer on that property. They're getting into bidding wars. They're paying more than the asking price. They're in cases paying more than the appraisal value. They're paying appraisal gaps. They're waiving inspections. All kinds of insane tactics going on out there to secure property as a potential home buyer. So Rex, why don't you give us a little insight as to what you've experienced, why you brought about this activity that you're exercising now, and then give us a step-by-step on how it works.
Copy that. So in January of 2016 was when inventory really started to hit a low, and each time it would hit a new low, it would surprise me that month's supply of inventory would keep going down. And here in the Twin Cities market, we're down to 2.1 months of housing supply. I'm sure your market is similar. And so in January 2016, soon after I had gotten a real estate, or soon after I jumped into real estate sales, I sat down and I brainstormed a list of, okay, if I'm a buyer's agent, what can I do to impress a listing agent? So I wrote down roughly a page of items, and I thought, I'll just implement all of it. So I did. And then as I implemented it, it kind of, some of it evolved over time, but basically it boils down to tapping into the seller's emotions through photography, through video, and then tapping into the real estate agent's logic side of, this is the offer that we want to work with, the most successful chance of, or the most highest chance of successful closing compared to other offers. And then how do we package that up so that we ensure that this information gives to the sellers directly and the agent doesn't filter it out, which sometimes can be an issue. So it starts with everybody now writes a love letter about a property. And so the sellers are getting these letters about how much people like a property. So take a step back and look at it from the seller's perspective. Let's say a seller has 5 offers on a home, and they sit down at the kitchen table or dining room table with their real estate agent on a Tuesday night, and they have these 5 offers, and they need to review them. And there's not much there's nothing that the sellers, there's no one buyer that the seller knows better than another buyer. The seller actually knows more about the loan originator because they know where the originator works, their NMLS ID number, their phone number, probably have the picture on the pre-approval letter. And all they know about the buyers are the buyers' names. And so what I ask my clients for is I ask them for permission to fully disclose. So I say, look, we want to share all the good points about your scenario. We want to share that you've been on your job for 2 years, that you have a great credit score, that you have cash in the bank in excess of your down payment, that there's high security in this pre-approval letter. Because in the world of pre-approval letters, every single transaction that makes it to a successful closing starts with a pre-approval letter. And every single transaction that fails also started with a pre-approval letter. And so it kind of diminishes the value of it. It becomes just a formality checkbox of, oh yeah, I got the letter and I threw it in the file. That can be by and large the attitude of the average real estate agent. They accept the offer and then they sit back and they say a hope and a prayer that it moves forward closing. So what we want to do is differentiate. So we share with the seller, hey, Joe and Susie Homebuyer, they've both been working at their respective employers for 2 years. They're both salaried. We're not using overtime income. Or if we are, we've verified it with a verification of employment. These are their credit scores. They have $12,000 in the bank above and beyond their down payment. And so there's no issue. And then a lot of times I'll make the statement too on a debt to income ratio, where if somebody's making an offer on a house, I'll put into my letter to the seller and the agent, there'll be a statement in there that says, even if Joe and Susie tomorrow went out and bought a brand new Mercedes-Benz 550 S-Class, even if they did that and their monthly payment was $1,400 per month, it would still qualify to close on your home. And that becomes a powerful statement because people are sometimes, and pardon my cat's tail.
Okay.
That's they show the security that this isn't a marginal buyer, somebody capable of, and then above and beyond that, now we want to personalize it. So my cell phone is filled with pictures of my clients standing in various living rooms. If they say anything other than absolutely not to a house, I'll take a picture of them standing in that living room, and that becomes the cover sheet to the offer. Not a picture of them in formal dress at a wedding or some nice picture they picked out. No, it's just them the way they are. They're human. They wear T-shirts every day just like everybody else, and there they are standing in that seller's living room. And then that personalizes it where, hey, wow, they took the time to take a picture of my living room. And a lot of times the dining room table where they are reviewing those offers is in the background of that photo. And so now we've personalized it. Now we've shown all this information where the seller now feels more comfortable with that buyer because they know more about them. If you're walking down the street and there's 5 people walking down the street, and if all of a sudden you could know the history of that person, you know, how they treated everybody throughout the day, and you would look at them differently because then you would know more about them. Until you know about them, you might be suspicious of them, or you might have questions about them. And so then even if we don't end up being the highest offer, 5 times in the last 12 months out of 41 buy-side transactions, the listing agent has called me back and said, hey, we like your loan originator, we like you, and we like your clients the best, but someone else has made a higher offer. If you will meet that offer, house belongs to your clients. And that's powerful.
That is powerful. And Rex, let's not pull any punches here. As a real estate agent and a former loan originator, and for our audience of agents and originators, everybody knows that we are seeing and dealing with things that might be difficult to highlight. We've got, people with 580 credit scores looking at down payment assistance, barely able to scrape together earnest money, these kinds of things. And obviously the real estate agents and the loan originators want to help everyone achieve this American dream of homeownership. But in a lot of cases, I would assume it's difficult for you to find items that you can highlight when it comes to getting those offers accepted. And don't get me wrong, obviously you've seen our pre-approval package. There's the typical pre-approval letter, and everybody watching knows that those may as well be written in jumbo red crayon for all the good they do. But then we also make sure to include some information about what other buyers have used us, what other agents have worked with us, some information about me, some information about the buyer's agent. And obviously, you're right, we still are lacking a piece of the puzzle other than the typical jumbo red crayon pre-approval letter, things about the buyer themselves. But when there aren't a lot of things to highlight about the buyer in those circumstances, what are you doing to fill in those gaps? I mean, obviously, we're not talking about how, she has lovely hair and he works out every day because, the sellers don't care. So tell us what you're doing when you're short on highlights.
On the short on highlights, sometimes I'll just point it out to be upfront and honest and say, and when I'm short on highlights, meaning we don't have the perfect, flawless buyer. Like the perfect buyer in the real estate market has 780 credit. They're buying half of what their budget or qualification could potentially allow. They're putting monstrous down payments. So anything less than that, then sellers look at as a lower certainty of closing, or what I prefer to term as agents remember the subprime days, where, and for people newer in the business, we'll step back a bit. Back in subprime days, down payment meant certainty of closing, because even if you didn't qualify for the loan that you were going to try to get, if you didn't qualify for that one, there was the next crummiest subprime loan program that you could do simply because you had a down payment. So listing agents remember this, but really what it boils down to now is who's been properly pre-approved, who's been vetted, who's been verified. And to show that we did the work and say, okay, look, we're using Minnesota Housing Down Payment Assistance or whatever the equivalent is in your market. And then we're doing that. However, we verified this and that, we verified employment, and we'll put in more of the verifications. And maybe we've pre-underwritten that. And then I have a specific paragraph that explains the difference between pre-approval and pre-underwriting. And if we explain those differences, now still the seller's going to be more familiar with that buyer. And what it does is the more we share, even if it's not the perfect good stuff that we'd love to share, the seller now knows more about that buyer than the other people, which makes them start to suspect the other people. Why didn't we share this?
Ah, that's interesting. That's really a good point. Are you sharing, obviously with collaboration with the loan originator and approval from your buyers, are you sharing automated underwriting results?
Not those. Now, some people do share those, and that's fine. Do you want to talk about the contractual issue with that?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, fair enough. So on the contractual issue, now this is my best understanding from talking to people who've worked at lenders that have had legal implications from sharing underwriting findings from Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And by underwriting findings, we mean the first page showing an approve eligible result or an approve accept from Fannie or Freddie, that they're sharing that page as a piece of certainty. Well, automated underwriting is a garbage in, garbage out process. And so if somebody just started selling cars 6 months ago, but they're making 80 grand a year, and they tell you, the loan originator, Adam, that they're making 80 grand a year, and I know you verify it, but if you don't verify their employment history, that they've been there for 2 years, you can't use that commission income. And so then the deal blows up anyway. But the contractual issue with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, from everything that I've learned, is that the lenders have contractual obligations with share proprietary information with anyone that's basically not necessary to close the loan. And so a couple of lender buyers that maybe lost deals, had bad feelings, and come back and filed lawsuits against them where they say, or at least sent threatening letters from attorneys and ended up settling, where they've said, look, you shared this information, but I didn't win this property, and you should never have shared that. And it's buried deep within basically the lender's user agreement with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that they can't share it. Now, if loan originators are sharing it, that's on them. And if agents are using it, that's on them, and that's fine. And somebody actually has to care in order to complain about it. So the people that do it, their kind of odds of having a problem are probably less than most of us would think the odds are, if you will. That's not my legal advice.
I do think that's true. No, for those of you watching, we're certainly not giving out any legal advice here by any stretch of the imagination. And I certainly do want all of you to err on the side of caution. Remember, there's no one deal that can make your career, but it only takes one to break it. So do be cautious and cognizant of what legal ramifications may exist, what your boundaries are, what your company's compliance would be, what your company's legal department would ask, advise, and want you to do. So yeah, certainly not what I'm getting at, but I'm trying to formulate for our entire audience here, particularly for the real estate agents, because it will then be on them to share this knowledge with their lender partners, what kinds of things you're doing, what kinds of things they can be doing to help get more offers accepted, and to then pass that knowledge on to. So if we're going to do this, we don't have a lot of highlights. We don't have an 820 FICO borrower. We're not putting 20% down. We don't have a 12% debt to income ratio, et cetera, et cetera. What kinds of things can the agent and the lender partner collaborate on to help their clients get their offers accepted? Really nothing more than that for those of you that are watching.
And a few other pieces of this offer presentation. So we personalize it with the photograph of people standing in the home that they're making the offer on. And then we have information about the buyer, whatever we want to disclose that we feel is good, that will sway, that will help the seller get to know the buyer. And let's say it is that minimum down payment assistance program, no problem. Here is, Adam's pre-underwritten this individual. He has a verification of employment in hand. He's received bank statements, based on W-2s, tax returns, and has a full file ready to submit to underwriting. One phrase that I use a lot is basically as soon as we have a purchase agreement, we're ready to click the button and submit it to underwriting. That's a powerful statement.
It is.
Because usually
certainly one we use here too. Something more along the lines of everything on our end is done. I just need a piece of collateral to plug into the equation.
Oh, that's a great one. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's very true. Once you've done all that due diligence.
And credit where credit's due, because I know my team is watching. It's really my team that makes all of that happen. I have the most fantastic transaction team that any loan originator would be lucky to have. So, girls, thank you for all of that. All right, awesome. Rex, so we've obviously talked about this for a long time, and there is one other negligible subject, just because it's kind of the heart and soul of our weekly How I Met Your Mortgage show here. Tell us about your lead generation. Do you buy leads from Zillow? That's a joke. And most of our audience will laugh at that. Somewhere there's somebody who loves Zillow going, but seriously, is it, referral business? Is it all past clients? Do you work your past client database? How did that translate from your lending career? Give us some idea of your lead generation techniques and tactics, just because that's really what we try to pass on to our audience every week.
Cool. So when I ceased being a mortgage lender, bear in mind, I had taken most of my clients for years, referred them to real estate agents that I knew. There's a couple of those relationships that are still intact and good for them. They're past clients, friends, family, a couple of them, not many, but a couple, who have such a strong relationship with the real estate agent that I referred them to, that they're still working with that person. I have one past client I can think of, been through multiple relationship breakups, and I think that person has bought and sold 3 homes without me. And that's fine. I'm glad that she's successful in life and that things are going well for her. But a lot of those relationships some of those relationships I wasn't able to break. What I started out with is I had my open house scenario that I gotten good at, that where somebody comes into an open house, I point out maybe a couple small issues with the home and say, oh, if you see this, then You can point this out in another house, even if you're not interested in this one. And then my open house becomes very powerful because now I've built high trust and rapport. And from the real estate agent side, what I do is I just refer them to a loan officer. Because if you go to about 20 different, if you want to do this experiment as an agent, go to an area that's not your market, drive 25 miles, and go to a bunch of open houses and see what other agents do. And you pretty much get the same three questions. How long you been looking? Where you looking? What price range are you looking at? And that's it. And then you'll get the offer of a business card, the offer of an MLS auto search. But very rarely will you get a referral to a loan originator. So if somebody comes into my open house and we're talking and I'll say, please check out the home, then I'd like to point out a couple of the issues with the house. Even if you're not interested in this home, I want to show you how to point these out in other homes. We'll talk about saddle valves on water pipes, feeding refrigerators, how they should be real valves and so on. If you don't know these things, go tag along with a home inspector for a couple of days. Go spend some time as an agent and just hang around a home inspector and go through home inspections. I've learned a lot of the plumbing and electrical I know by in the wintertime. I would call my electrician and say, Steve, I don't have anything to do for the next 2 days. Can I just ride in your truck? I'll cut wire, I'll pull wire, I'll do whatever you want. I'll be your assistant. And then your knowledge just expands and expands. It's huge. So you share that info and then run down questions to show that you're an expert. And so I'll say I work with a number of different loan originators. Not every person is right to help every client, and everybody has their specialties. So first question is, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer who've come to my open house, are you a veteran of the U.S. military? No. Are you a veteran, or are you a active duty service member or reservist of the U.S. military? And they'll say, no, I'm not. Cool. I'm going to ask you a question. Might seem silly. Maybe they're younger. This might seem silly, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are you by chance the unremarried surviving spouse of a veteran who was killed in action, is currently a prisoner of war, is died as the result of combat-related injuries, or has been missing or presumed dead for greater than 90 days in a combat zone? And then people start to think, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. And then it's, are you a physician, police officer, firefighter, teacher, and on down the list of specialty loan programs, and then asking about credit score, desired down payment. And I'll say, look, Adam's going to be your best loan originator for your scenario. Sounds like you've got a fair amount of down payment. You've got great credit. Adam's got, a situation at Core Finance Group that can really help you out. It's got a team of assistants, and they'll explain the process even way before you buy a house. And I say, I'd like to send you Adam's information, his website, for you to apply. And that's completely different than what they get at any other open house if they're going around, because everybody else just asks, how long you been looking? Where are you looking? What price range are you looking at? And then they offer a business card and they say, tell me when you find a house. So I want to build the value with people and show my professionalism, my knowledge. You don't have to be a former loan originator to do this. Anybody can do this. And if they don't have the knowledge to do it, spend 2 days with a home inspector and spend 3 hours in your office and say, Adam, what are some good questions I should ask? And then they get those questions and then say, okay, this is, Adam, can do this type of loan. Sounds like this might be a fit. He may think of other ideas. Apply with him and his team and they'll help you out. So I do the open houses for cold lead gen. I do not buy any leads from Zillow, from Trulia, from Realtor.com, anybody. I don't run any Facebook funnels. I don't do any of that. Unfortunately, when tax time comes, I have darn near no deductions. My only deductions are a few meals that I buy for clients, vehicle mileage, and my broker expenses, and that is it. And so then from the past client standpoint, I always want to be reminding people of with evidence of success, but I want to do it in a subtle way. And so I never post photos of people at closings in, when home buyers are closing, take a photo and we will put it on Facebook. You'll never see that. And what I do is I send out what I call stories from the heart. And I try to do it every month, but really I fail and I get to it every 2 months or something like that. But this year I promised to be better at it. However, I already failed in February. But I ask one of my recent clients for permission to tell their story. And I say, you've got a great story. You had to overcome this and that and the other thing in order to buy a house. And I want to share it with my past clients, my friends, family, my sphere of influence. And I don't email them. I snail mail these letters. And I had a relative, a second cousin of mine at a family gathering come up to me and he said, I love your letters. They're so awesome. I saved them up on my kitchen countertop. And when my kids came home from college, I told them, you got to read these. Look at this. And so it's the story of a home buyer of basically four things: how hard they had to work to buy a house, what they had to overcome, how I helped, and what they got in the end, which was the purchase or sale of a home. And now what I'm going to add too is I just had this idea the other day. I want to show more evidence of success and show that I'm busy and that people know, like, and trust me. And so at the end of this letter, I'm also going to ask every other client, I'm going to say, hey, I want to put you in my newsletter and congratulate you. And they all say, oh, yeah, no problem. Don't matter. Because this isn't going to the public. This is going to people who know. And so then I'm going to add at the bottom, congratulations, Joe, on your new duplex and renting out your house and becoming a landlord. Congratulations, Susie, on your first little townhouse. That's great. And congratulations, so-and-so on your great move up to your dream home, and show that I do all sorts of types of transactions. And then that provides the evidence of success so that when people get these letters, which they basically can't ignore because the only spam filter on snail mail is the garbage can. But if it's interesting enough and it's different every month and it's a story, people want to read it. And I get all kinds of comments about this. And so a lot of agents and loan officers alike, they have a mailing program where they just dump mail on people. And I want to personalize it. I want people to see my letter and go, oh, that's going to be another cool story. And they set it aside to read it. And they know it's not going to take more than 5 minutes. And it brightens their day and it makes them think well of me and it enables me to keep in touch. So aside from sending stories from the heart like that, from calling past clients, friends, family, sphere of influence from time to time, which I don't do enough of, which I need to do more of, and hosting open houses, that's it. And it brought me within 2 years to 53 closed transactions.
That's fantastic. Well, Rex, thank you so much for being our guest. I can't believe that this time went by so fast, but it did. And this video will be in syndication on Rex's Facebook page. We'll send you a digital copy of it so that you can do what you'd like with it, certainly. Kelly will put it up on YouTube, so on and so forth. Kelly, we basically ignored you for the entire episode again. And obviously you were in Austin, so you heard Rex and I talk about all of this content. So I don't think that there's a whole lot you'd want to add. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're good.
All right. And for those of you watching, if you are a real estate agent, if you are a loan originator, and if you would like to be a guest on How I Met Your Mortgage, you can use our text code below. You can text CORE to 63566, and it will ping you back that information, as well as all kinds of other goodies like how to get a copy of my new book, Just the Tips, really written for originators and real estate agents. And again, Rex, thank you so much for the time. That was a wonderful episode. And you and I will talk soon, buddy.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate you having me on your show.
It's my pleasure.